my phone rung and I saw the doctor's name. I'm like, oh my God, this is not happening.
In the click of a receiver, everything can change. The most dreaded and earth-shattering news. Nothing can prepare you for that moment.
The doctor says she went in cardiac arrest. They're sorry she didn't make it.
In this guttural moment of devastation and disbelief, you are changed. Your world has changed forever.
He's like, she's gone. I'm like, she's gone. It's just so surreal.
Every 6 minutes, somebody in America dies of a blood clot.
We're here to change that statistic. Welcome to Taking a Breath, a Stop the Clot podcast.
A podcast dedicated to bringing awareness of the dangers of blood clots from the clotting disorders community to the world.
With the help of many notable blood clot survivors, we are here to give you the knowledge and the skills you need to prevent this silent killer.
My name is Leslie Lake. I am the president of the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a blood clot survivor.
And my name is Todd Robertson. I am the patient engagement liaison for the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a 6-time blood clot survivor.
And we're here to stop the clot. The loss of a child is among the most immobilizing and traumatic experiences any one person can face on their journey through life. How do you find the courage within yourself to move forward from such devastation? Our guest today is someone who has unfortunately experienced this cataclysmic reality. As a mother, activist, and community leader whose work in and out of the National Blood Clot Alliance is saving countless lives in the fight against this silent killer. Please join me in welcoming the heroic Arshelle Brooks Harris.
My name is Arshelle Brooks Harris. I'm an advocate for Stop the Clot and for the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter, Arshelle, who doesn't have a voice anymore because she succumbed to this deadly disease at the age of 32 years old from a blood clot called a pulmonary embolism. My daughter just was... I miss her so much. My daughter was my life. She was my world. She was the oldest of my 4 children. She was my best friend. She just was a joy, and I'm not just saying that because she's my child. Everyone loved Arshelle. She worked in the medical field, and it's unfortunate that this happened to her, and she knew the signs and symptoms of blood clots, but yet she thought she was too young to get it, so she brushed it off. And we can't have people doing this because you're not here anymore, and it hurts your family. And she was so rambunctious and just gorgeous. And she had a daughter, and she's 15 now. When it happened, she was 12. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. Anything can happen at any time so fast. And she was here today and gone today, basically. Arshelle found out that she was pregnant, and the way the baby was attached to her fallopian tubes, it said the baby wouldn't survive. So she had a spontaneous abortion, and she just bled a lot. And she would tell me that she felt lightheaded. She had a headache. Her stomach would hurt. And it was to be understandable because of the procedure. She just had the DNC. This was during the time of COVID. She still was herself, but kind of gloomy like. So I said, Arshelle, why don't you go back to the hospital? Oh, I'm fine. Her friend just had a baby and she was made the godmother. So then she went to go see her goddaughter. She told me that she got lightheaded, real lightheaded. And she felt herself getting dizzy, about to pass out. And she passed her goddaughter to the mom and she fell back and hit her head on the floor. And when they called the ambulance and she went to the hospital, when the doctor did call me, he says, your daughter's here. She fell and hit her head. She's unresponsive. I'm like, okay, how was she unresponsive? What happened? They told me to call back in an hour. Thank God she came around. But they said that she did have a leg fracture. They don't know if she twisted when she fell because she fell that hard to be unresponsive. So they thought it was, for her, she had a bleeding in her brain. They wanted to check it out. So they told me to call back. And the CAT scan came back. She didn't have any clots or any, bleeding in her brain or anything. So they did cast her. Arshelle worked at a hospital in Brooklyn, and she wanted to go there for a second opinion. She made an appointment for them to look at her leg. During that week, she just was not herself, and I love to cook. So we always have like Sunday dinners at my mother's house. This particular day, while I was cooking, Arshelle came in, but it was everybody's first time seeing her with the cast because she stayed at home. She came in, but she was quiet. She wasn't herself. Arshelle, what's going on? What's wrong? And then she said, nothing, I just don't feel well, but she's coming to eat. My baby loves to eat. She just said she just want to lay down for a few. I turned around and still was preparing dinner, and I just felt someone come behind me and hug me and just started kissing me all over my neck and my face. And she just was saying that she loved me. Then I said, Arshelle, you feel warm. I said, why don't you go to the emergency room to see, because you may have an infection from the medical procedure she had, the DNC. And she said she had an appointment that following Tuesday. She went to the doctor that Tuesday. My youngest daughter went with her. And while she was on the table, she sent me a picture, and you could see the difference in her right leg and where her left leg was a little swollen and red on the side. And I asked her, was she okay? And she said they're going to recast her and everything. But I said, why is your leg red and swollen like that? They said she might have had a reaction to the cast. And that's why it was a little swollen. It wasn't like big swollen. It was a little swollen. But you could still see the difference with the right leg. She came home and she still was quiet, really not eating, picking at her food. And are you okay? We know our kids as a mom. My granddaughter even asked me what's wrong with her mom because Arshelle was quiet and rubbing her leg, and she said it felt tight on her. And I asked her, what did they say? She was upset because they said she had to keep the cast on for 6 weeks. We were at my mom's house again. She came over and she was hopping and her face just looked flushed. And she propped herself up on my mom's sofa and she just kept saying, my leg hurt, my leg hurt. I said, what are you taking for it? So I said, they didn't give you any painkillers? She said, no, she just was taking Tylenol and Motrin. And I just kept like bothering her. You need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the hospital. Mommy, I got an appointment tomorrow. I'll see what they say. But I'm telling her, what you're going through has nothing to do with your follow-up from your miscarriage. You need to go see what's going on with your leg if you're complaining you're in all this pain and discomfort. Her fiance was coming to get her. And I said, you promised me you're going to go to the hospital? She said, yeah, I promise. She said, I'm getting ready to go get in the car right now. I love you. Just like that. And that's the last time I heard from my daughter. The last thing. First, it was the kissing on the face. It's all on my neck, everything. And then that next day, just the worst day of my life. I'm sorry. She went to the appointment the next day, and my youngest daughter went with her. When she got there, she just was still in a lot of pain, hopping. And what I learned, that she was telling the staff that she couldn't breathe. They must have didn't do anything, because she wound up calling my daughter on the phone while she's outside in the front, and calling her fiance, telling them that she can't breathe. So then Michelle was wailing back and forth, like just going back and forth, saying she can't breathe, she can't breathe. So she's screaming for somebody to do something, and then they come and give her the oxygen. Why did you have to call my daughter, who's in the front, in a waiting area, waiting for you, to tell them that you can't breathe? And you don't give her oxygen right then and there. Like, you're still saying, oh, it's okay. It's you had a lot of bleeding, so you're probably still, lightheaded and feel like you can't breathe. But this is the blood clot. This is the blood clot. So it got to the point where she was unresponsive. Mind you, the hospital is 2.5 blocks away. And by the time they got there, she was not responsive or anything. So my youngest daughter called me and said, Mommy, I think you're going to have to come to the ER for Arshelle. I'm like, what's wrong? I thought she went last night. And she said, no, she didn't go. She went to her appointment. And I just screamed in anger. Said, I told her to go. What's going on? She's not woke. That's what my daughter said. She's not woke. What do you mean? What do you mean? And as soon as that happened, mind you, I'm an amputee. I stood up in my room on one leg. What do you mean? What is going on? So I got dressed, and as I'm walking to the bus stop, I'm just praying. Then she called me back and said, when you come through where the security is. And I know what that means. It's critical. It's critical. When I got there, you just heard like a crying, and then I'm like, maybe I'm hoping it's somebody else's family. Not that I want something bad to happen to someone else's family. No, this is somebody else's family. I get to the door, I see my niece, both of my nieces, my daughter, like, they were crying and talking, like, let me go see her. I'm like, where's she at? And they wouldn't let me go because she wasn't stable enough to have someone visit her. And I found out that they worked from the time she got from the facility to the hospital. The doctors worked on her for 75 minutes to bring her back. 75 minutes. Usually they would call it, but they worked on 75 minutes. To me, that was God's way of letting me get to see my baby before. Who knows what was going to happen. The pulmonologist came in and they spoke. So they suspected it was a blood clot. So I guess they did the test and they confirmed that it was. And he explained to me the blood thinner that she would get, it may cause internal bleeding, because they don't know exactly where the blood clot is, and it's just coming up. So I had to sign for a blood transfusion if needed. And they just kept saying it don't look good. She may not make it through the night. And I'm not believing that. Let me go see my child. So I finally got to see her. So they took me back there to see her, and she's just laying there lifeless. I'm like, this is not happening. So I call her nickname is Munchie. I used to call her Munchie because she eats. Like I said, she always loved to eat. So I nicknamed her Munchie. So that next day, My brother was calling me saying, you have to come to the hospital now. She's going. And I went up there and I just saw everybody outside. Like, you would thought it was a riot or something. Everybody was outside the hospital. This is how much this girl is loved. And I'm like, oh man, did I miss her? Did she go? And I'm rushing in the hospital. I'm just like on 1,000 trying to get in. So when I got there and I looked at her, and like I'm in a wheelchair, so I'm like eye level to her laying down. And I just stood up and her eyes would roll back. That was so hard to see. She was lifeless. And she was so cold. So cold. And I just was rubbing her arms. I just stayed there with her, and that's not my baby laying up there. So I just started singing a gospel song called An Incredible God, and just singing to her, rubbing her hands and her arms. And after I stood up and looked at her like that, I made my peace. I said, God, whatever your will is. So everybody that was outside, we leave and go to my mother's house. And I just was holding her hand. And she's like, where's my mom? Did you tell my mom to call me? I said, your dad is going to be here in a little while and we're going to talk to you. She said, no, something wrong with my mom. And I just said, she's very sick. I just told the same thing the nurse told me, that she's very sick. So then everybody came in and she started squeezing my hand and saying, why everybody is coming to grandma's house? Why is everybody here? And you just see the fear in her face. And she knew something. Like, I'm calling my mother. She's not answering. It's already a day later. And everybody's whispering. And, she knew something was wrong. So then her dad came to her, and I just held her hand. And he told her, your mom is real sick. And the doctors are saying she may not make it, but we're going to be all right. And everything. She just jumped on me and just was squeezing me. I was holding her. And my brother took my mom in her room and told her, and I just can't get that scream out my head. The way my mom screamed. Oh, no, not Michelle. No, don't tell me that. Not Michelle. It just was chaotic at the time that everybody stopped crying. I went in the living room to sit down. I said, no, let me get my phone just in case the hospital called. My phone rung and I saw the doctor's name. I'm like, oh my God, this is not happening. So then, like, me and my husband looking at each other, and then I answered the phone, and the doctor said she went in cardiac arrest. What do you want us to do? So you do what you have to do. Do everything you have to do. And in the background, you just hear the beeping of it just sound chaotic in the background, the beeping of the machines. The doctor said, come on, you hear go. Just different noises in the background. This will never come away from me from as long as I live. The way she told me she loved me and I love you, and the sounds of the machine and my mother screaming, that I will never forget. I can't get that out of my head. Every time I try not to think about it, but I have my good days and my bad days. They called back 2 minutes later and said, they're sorry she didn't make it. From then on, it was just, he's like, she's gone. I'm like, she's gone. It's just so surreal. I was calling everyone, telling that she didn't make it. And right then and there, I Googled, what is a blood clot? I know what a blood clot is, but hello, my daughter passed away from it. I need to know what a blood clot is that makes you die.
We try our best to emphasize the word silent when we say that blood clots are the silent killer. It is the covert and mimicking symptoms that make you zig when they zag. With us to discuss preemptive testing for pulmonary embolisms and the risk factor of secondary clotting is Dr. Elliot Hout from Johns Hopkins.
So if somebody thinks a patient has a pulmonary embolism, there's one main test we use today to diagnose that, and that's a CT scan. It's a very specific type called a CT pulmonary angiogram, but the idea is it's a CT scan, which is basically a fancy X-ray. We inject some dye into your arm and then take a bunch of pictures, and it shows us the blood vessels going into your lungs, and we can look and see if there's clot there. There's a few other tests as well for people who can't get a CAT scan or for other reasons, but in general, the test of choice really is that CT scan. And I think it's reasonable to push for that test in someone you think that they have a blood clot. That is really the test to get, and we should be getting it probably more and more, not less and less. So once you have one blood clot, you're at risk for another blood clot literally for the rest of your life. And it's unclear exactly why that is. Part of it might be genetic factors. Now we have some genetic testing to look at, are you a person who has a hereditary inherited reason that puts you at higher risk? That's certainly one reason. But the other reason is now your blood vessels may have been damaged and they're more prone to getting a clot in those areas that already had a clot before. So, when we have patients that come to the hospital, we always try to give them prevention medications to help prevent blood clots. One of the highest risk factors for a patient in the hospital for getting a blood clot is a known history that they've had one in the past. So once you have a blood clot, you are at high risk to get one again and again. So every time you go into the hospital, make sure people know that you've had a blood clot before, and we should be doing kind of extra stuff to help prevent a second blood clot this time while you're in the hospital, as an example.
So I just was looking on different websites, and then I came across the National Blood Clot Alliance. And I just read about their organization and what they do and, how they bring awareness and everything. And it just went off in my head like a light bulb. I'm going to get in touch with them. Members of the Blood Clot Alliance, like we have the thrombambassadors. And I think if, we bring awareness, like give out the pamphlets, this is a worldwide thing. Blood clots is a medical condition. So it doesn't discriminate what country you're in, what part of the world. We're still humans. You can get a blood clot. And a lot of people, they don't go to the hospital because of, like what my culture, with like African Americans, don't like to go to the hospital. Me, myself as well. So I get it.
Arshelle, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Arshelle and I have spent a lot of time together. When I joined the board of NBCA, when I got involved in NBCA, I was like, this is a great group of people, but boy, are they white. And I live in New York, you live in New York, and I was like, this is not representative of where I live. And, I met you, I heard Lachelle's story, what had happened, and I wanted you to be part of our team. And part of the reason was I knew you would be a strong advocate because you do use your voice. But part of it is that we need to reach the Black community.
Yes.
And, I guess I want you to talk to us today about where are the gaps? Like, how do we improve messaging? How do we get doctors to, take Black individuals more seriously in a hospital setting? How do we educate Black people about blood clots? Like, you're the voice that people will listen to. How do we do this? Like, what is the message to both the clinicians and just to people in general? And also, how do you use your faith to really, improve that message and get into the community?
Well, like a lot of Black African Americans is more like spiritual. And I think Black churches, we can start there and constantly give out literature in hospitals, clinics, possibly talk to administrators so we can have meetings with them to get them to understand importance, how important this is. And it's killing us faster than diabetes, heart attack, stroke, cancer. We went to a health fair in Maryland speaking about blood clots and giving out the education and everything and letting people know our stories and everything. One of the men that was there, he thought about what we were speaking on. And he's the type too that don't go to the hospital. Here we go with the African American. Don't want to go to the hospital for nothing. Till he remembered what we were speaking on. He went to the hospital and they told him he had a blood clot. He was walking with a limp and he was pushing the cart. And I said, "You okay? Why are you limping like that?" He was like, "Sis, I don't know. Like, I'm having this shortness of breath in my leg, throbbing and stuff. Light bulb, go to ear." I said, "Go now. Go now." He said, "Well," I said, "You see the pamphlet you got in your hand? You have the symptoms of a blood clot." Same thing like my daughter. "Oh, I go to the doctor on this day and that." I said, "I'm telling you, the way you talk, you run, and the way he's limping and he's getting out of breath each step he's taking." I said, "I'm telling you, go to the ER." He's like, "Oh, sis, I'm gonna wait to go on my appointment." That night, he called me. I said, "Hello." He said, "Sis, you're not gonna believe where I'm at." "Oh, where?" He said, "In the hospital." And right, I knew. I said, "What happened?" He said, "The doctor told me if I'd have came an hour later, I would have died. I had a blood clot in my leg." People are dying a lot faster with blood clots, and most Black people are diabetic. That I know, that I've grew up with. They always call it the sugar. I've heard that all my life, but didn't know that it was diabetes. And a lot of times, just as myself, we don't go to the hospital not unless we're in dire straits. It can be, just like how I lost my leg. It got to the point where I couldn't take the pain anymore. Had I gone to the hospital, maybe my leg could have been saved. But then God has a plan, so I don't question him about what happened to myself or Michelle. I tell people all the time, I think a lot of fundraisers or going out with a megaphone and just getting out there in the communities, especially the poor communities. And maybe one person will pick up a pamphlet here or there and then tell their friend. And we've witnessed that at these health fairs where people either they had a blood clot, or someone they knew had a blood clot. And then they got our educational materials. And, just like the old Calgon commercial, you tell one friend and so on and so on and so on. This is how we can save lives. I believe so.
I do too. It's so true. I want you to talk a little bit about, we went to Baltimore together. We went into the church and share the story with everybody about what that was like, meeting another mom who had lost her daughter also, and what it was like to share your message with them in front of all of these people.
Lachelle's been gone 3 years. Her daughter was gone 1 year. I know that 1 year hump. It's terrible. It's terrible, but some people take it different. They can't eat. Like my other kids, like my youngest daughter, because she was there with Lachelle when it happened. So she saw her with the wailing and can't breathe. So that's something that's going to stick in her head. This is, it's painful. No one should have to go through this when it can be prevented. We don't need more people to go away because it's not going away. And then it could be your mom, your daughter, your sister, your godmother, your auntie, your uncle, your father. It goes down the chain. Anybody can get it. Anybody. It doesn't discriminate at all. So we need to be a voice and I think go out more like with the Black American community churches, maybe go meet with a pastor or a deacon and this is my story and this is her story. And we want to speak to the Black community as a whole to tell them the signs and symptoms of it because the Black race is, with blood clots, is skyrocketing.
So one of the things that we're hoping to do with your advocacy efforts is National Blood Clot Alliance wants to create a church tour and have you go in and speak with members of Black churches to learn about blood clots, to educate people about blood clots, but then also spend time in community clinics, community hospitals, and educate clinicians about blood clots as well, so that everybody has the information. What would that mean to you to be able to do that?
Oh, that would be a joy. I'm here smiling as you're saying it. I'm rocking in my chair, and I'm just full of joy to help someone say, Munchie, we're doing it. We're doing it. Mommy's doing it.
So if you could, at the end of this podcast, kind of have parting words for people in the Black community, what would you want to share with them about blood clots? What would you want them to know?
Once you learn the signs and symptoms of blood clots, take heed to it. Don't just sit there because we sit around and say, I don't feel like staying in a hospital. I don't feel like sitting there all day. They're going to take too long. But it's better for you to go to the hospital. And if you're saying you're not going because you can't afford it, I'd rather have an unpaid medical bill than to pay with my life. Take it seriously. No one should have to pay with their lives for something that's preventable. That can be preventable and save your life and other people's lives. So yes, take it seriously. And my daughter thought she was too young, but I can't tell her I told you so. So yes, take it very seriously.
Arshelle, thank you for joining us here today on Taking a Breath. There's not a dry eye amongst us. You are incredible. Your story is incredible. Lachelle's story is heartbreaking. And your ability to take just the most horrible thing, a parent losing a child, and advocating to save the lives of other people makes you a true hero. So thank you for joining us today and sharing. I know it took a lot of courage to do it.
I appreciate it. As long as I can save a life, I appreciate it so much. And thank you all for having me here.
In the rubble of life's greatest tragedies, finding a shimmer of the silver lining can be an impossible task. Finding the strength to protect and provide for your community and loved ones in the midst of turmoil is nothing short of heroic.
We want to thank Arshelle for sharing her strength and vulnerability with us today, and to thank you for joining us here on Taking a Breath. A special thank you to Dr. Elliot Hout from Johns Hopkins for sharing his endlessly useful insight into all things clotting. For more information on risks, prevention, and community, please visit stoptheclot.org.
We know the patient because we are the patient. Together with listeners like you, we can collectively stop the clot.
Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.